What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a react. Now we're going to be checking out this video right here from We Communicate Online French School. It's from a tiny YouTube channel, but check out this title. Language influencer with 2.7 million views, French teacher can't understand his French. Essentially what's going to happen right now is this little YouTuber right here is going to go to war with one of the OG YouTubers out there within the language learning space. And it's not just any YouTuber. He's going to war with Alexander Arguelles Arguelles. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. I'm sorry, guys, but you all know who this is. Okay, he's well known within the language learning space. In fact, I would say he's probably universally loved because he seems like a pretty chill guy. He's got his cat, sits in front of a fireplace, talks about languages, slow, calm, you know. I've never actually seen any realistic hate towards the guy. So when I saw this video come out, I was like, okay, let's explore this, because realistically, I haven't explored the professor's content myself up until I checked out this video, so I realistically didn't know. All I've seen is that the professor, like, comments about the professor are generally along the lines of, if you want a trusted source, go check him out. He knows what he's talking about. So let's watch the video together.
Hi, welcome back. My name's Chris. I'm a French coach at We Communicate. And this morning, barely an hour ago, I stumbled on this French teaching video that reached 2.7 million views.
Okay, you'll notice straight up, he does not include the title of the video, does not include the creator, anything like that, but we can see 2.7 million views and the description. The video he's talking about is this video right here. Teach yourself a language in 15 minutes a day, step-by-step demonstration. It is from 3 years ago and it has the exact same description. Now, I can be even more certain that he's speaking about this one because the French teacher here actually writes a blog post where he calls him out by name. So let's watch the rest of the video.
7 million views in 3 years. Remarkable numbers. And the creator, who's a decorated professor with all the university accolades, promises that you can learn French in just 15 minutes a day.
Okay, I will address this 15 minutes a day like a little bit later when we actually check out the professor's video, so I'm not going to skip over this because I feel like there is some justification to this, but also some that is not justified.
Now, there's several things I'd like to address in this video. The first being the French of that person, and I'll be talking about his method in a second. I listened to him speak French, all of 20 seconds. I pressed pause, I didn't need any more, because I couldn't understand him. His French was that bad that I didn't need any more to know that there were words I couldn't get, that he didn't understand the basic sounds of French, and he wasn't a French speaker.
Okay, I'm gonna like jump straight in. When I do reviews of people and them speaking languages, there is no way in God's green given earth that I would make a judgment call based on 20 seconds of someone speaking the language. Now, within 20 seconds, you can get a kind of an idea, you know, about their ability to pronounce the language, but you can't get an idea about their ability to use the language realistically. It could just be a bad 20 seconds, you know? Like, sometimes it takes a while to warm up the old engine before you get started type of thing. So this here kind of sets off a little bit of red flags for me on the French teacher, because, like, You're telling us that you only checked out 20 seconds worth and then you've gone and made a video about this. But let's continue.
He just wasn't. I just couldn't understand. I could not understand his French. 20 seconds later, okay, that's it. Doesn't speak French, 2.7 million views. There's a few things to say about this. First, we'll say the obvious. It's amazing how you can have so much success on YouTube, 2.7 million views, be an influencer of languages, be one of those polyglots, and not really be able to speak the language. I find that quite fascinating.
Now, obviously, he's talking about the fact that there's a lot of bullshitoglots out there, and I understand this sentiment because obviously I expose lots of them, and there's a lot more to come in the future. I will be at this for a while. However, you need to keep that separate to the fact that you're looking at an individual. At the end of the day, you're still investigating a specific person, okay? So whether you're angry about the fact that there's a whole heap of bullshitoglots out there, you're still reviewing one specific person. So let's forget about all those others and focus it on the one.
And I've never figured out how these people do it. I've just never understood how you become a language influencer. Promise people that you have a magical method, promise people that you speak 10 different languages, that it works for them and it will work for you, people love it, millions of views, and you become one of these polyglots. I just spoke to one of my good friends.
There's a million different reasons how this happens. Okay, you know, someone could just make a video that just happens to go viral and they're like, I need to somehow work off of this, you know, I can make money, blah, blah, blah. There's people that just, they feel that there's some type of prestige behind it. There's so many different reasons, but this is not related to the specific person in question. In fact, I feel like by stating all of this here, after talking about, you know, this specific influencer, you're trying to create a connection between the two by saying, hey, look, there's a whole heap of bullshits out there, therefore this person is a bullshit. Like, you need to separate these two things. Let's focus on the individual.
Who's just told me actually that he's on his way to having a distinction for his PhD thesis, so bravo to him. And he teaches French professionally also, and he calls them these uppercut sentences on YouTube, you know, les phrases coup de poing in French. And it does sound a bit like an uppercut, you know, 15 minutes a day, learn French. But the reality is, okay, let's do some maths, because...
Okay, before we do the maths, because that sounds pretty bad, if the professor's out here telling people that you're going to learn a language in 15 minutes a day, he is justified to be pissed off, because that is bullshit, okay? Let's be honest about that. Everyone knows who's legitimate and honest in this space that you ain't learning no language on 15 minutes a day. But let's see if that's what the professor's got to say. So, the 31-minute long video that he is referencing is this one right here. Let's watch a few segments from it to see if this is what the professor's saying.
Hello everybody. This video is a direct follow-up to the previous one in which I mentioned that it was possible to learn a language by studying 15 minutes a day, every day, systematically, in about the course of a year.
Okay, so straight up, that sounds bad, okay? You're not going to learn a language in 15 minutes a day. And if that's what we're going to base this entire argument off, that's the professor's stance, then yeah, that sounds really bad. But let's keep listening.
One person put in the comments there that they'd like to see a sample of that, and 2 people wrote to me that they'd really like that. So this video may be about 25 minutes long if I expound too much on other things, but in the heart of it will be a sample demonstration of how I would...
Okay, so you can see at this point, he's not clarifying any further what he means by 15 minutes a day, and if I was to base it just on this alone, I'd be pretty pissed, you know? And realistically, there is some justified, you know, criticism happening right now. Come on, professor, let's be honest, you're not going to learn a language in 15 minutes a day. But is this what he's actually saying, okay? Because he's a professor. These guys have a tendency to just, you know, muddle along endlessly, just drone on, okay? That's what they do. I've been to university before, I've seen them. Okay, let's jump through the video now, and if I go along the bottom here, you'll see the most watched portions are like a tiny bit there, a segment in the middle, and then this bit at the back end. So let's watch the back end portion, okay, and see what he's got to say.
What was that, 5-6 times? And to review the 2 previous lessons. The ability to proceed at this pace depends, again, on how difficult the language is for you, how complicated it gets in particular materials, how much review you need to do. But I feel like a language like this coming along, I would be making good progress. This would be, making good progress through the book. If I keep up at this pace, it's got 100 lessons. I should be, if I were to start on January 1st, or now it's January 4th, starting at the beginning of January, by April, I should be done with the first cycle of going through the book. And then I would obviously continue reviewing, making sure I had most of the material down. And then, again, depending on how difficult I found the language, how much work I needed to do with it. In all cases, the goal is ultimately, you want to, without striving to memorize this, you want to internalize it. You want to digest it. You want it to be all...
Okay, so far, what we can hear is that for this 15 minutes a day, he's focused on this book, and he's actually talking about doing loops through the book, okay? You do it once, and then probably a couple of times after that. But let's keep listening.
Almost as if you had memorized the entire content of this. And if you can do that, you will, again, you'll be that advanced beginner. You'll have a thorough overview.
Okay, he just said it. You will be an advanced beginner. He's not promising that you're going to be fluent or even intermediate. He's saying you're going to be an advanced beginner if you do this 15 minutes per day over a year, cycle through this book. Now, would you really be an advanced beginner in French after a year of doing this? I think it really depends on the person. And even then, I'd say probably no. You'd probably be a beginner unless you're at least listening to the language a little bit outside of this. So there is some justified criticism of this video and what the professor's saying here. One, the professor should have actually straight up at the beginning said, this will help you get to like an advanced beginner stage, by the end of a year if you do this 15 minutes per day. And even then you should probably, have some more input and stuff like that. So that is on the professor. He should definitely have put that at the start of the video because you are kind of selling bullshit if someone doesn't watch to the end of the video. And let's be honest, this is YouTube. Most people aren't going to watch to the end of the video. But again, that's also on the person for not watching. So that is valid criticism there. Now, again, the 15 minutes a day, I get the feeling what the professor's trying to stress here is that you can get the foundations of the language down pat by the end of the year, but you're not going to be able to speak or read the language or anything like that. In fact, let's listen a little bit more.
Of most of the language. French has literary tenses that I don't think are introduced, verb conjugations I don't think are introduced here. You'd still be very hard pressed to pick up a novel and read it after you finish this book, but you would have a very solid foundation. You could survive.
Yeah, so as he said, you have a solid foundation and it's basically going to serve you well. So if this part was at the beginning of the video, I would basically just turn around and say to the French teacher, what the fuck are you on about, mate? Like, he's being very upfront here, but I can see what's happened here. The French teacher, we communicate, hasn't watched the full video. This is the problem, guys. Like, I understand we want to call out frauds within the space, but you gotta actually do your work. You gotta investigate properly. You can't just make a judgment call on such a small portion. So let's go back to the rest of his argument. We're going to look at the blog post that the French teacher posted, which his name is Chris. Sorry, I temporarily forgot the name. I'm sorry about that, Chris. But let's see what you've got to say here about the 15-minute claim. So we'll start with this. So, this immediately caught my attention because I'd recently written a post encouraging at least 6 hours per week of language practice. Why? Let's do the math. 15 minutes a day is 91 hours per year, 11 days and 11 and a half, 8 hours. What can you master in 11 days a year? See, this is the issue. He didn't say you're going to master it. He said you're going to be an advanced beginner. So this is on you, okay? Now, you could actually rewrite this and say, could you really be an advanced beginner by the end of the year? And I would kind of agree with you that that's probably like a valid case. You're probably not going to be an advanced beginner by the end of the year on 91 hours. But he didn't say master. So now the problem is that you're putting words into the professor's mouth, and this does not look good. Okay, so now he's actually calling out mistakes that the professor made within the video. So we're actually going to go together watch this section.
I try to do the best that I can to understand what I'm saying as I say it, as if I've never said it before. So here I go with the blind shadowing, and this is the beginning of the 15-minute lesson. So I'm going to keep track with the stopwatch throughout this, so we'll see if it's about 15 minutes at the end. When you're actually doing this, you obviously don't need to be tracking every single step, but this is just to see if it's about 15 minutes.
Okay, so here's a couple of things we need to take note of, okay, before we critique the French of the professor. One, he's acting like a beginner. Two, he's doing shadowing, okay? Shadowing is hard. And it's very easy to mess up the sounds of the language while shadowing because you're trying to keep up pace with what you're listening to, okay? And it's probably going to sound bad overall unless even when I shadow in Esperanto, it's not something I do anymore. Okay, let's think. Yeah, okay. If I shadow in Esperanto, I'm probably going to mess up words realistically because I'm going to try keep up the pace of whoever I'm listening to while doing it. So you will make mistakes and you will jump over sounds.
Okay, so here I go. 29e leçon. Question. Le ridicule. Prenez un kilo de plomb et un kilo de plume. Lequel est le plus lourd? Ben, un kilo de plomb, bien sûr. Le plomb est le plus lourd que le plume. Mais non, un kilo, c'est un kilo. Ils ont le même poids. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de mon nouveau pitamien? Il est sans doute plus intelligent que le dernier, mais il est plus beau et plus gentil aussi. Mais Il a un petit défaut. Il bégaye. Oui, d'accord, mais seulement quand il parle.
Okay, so you probably heard enough. If you speak French, you're going to be able to make your own judgment, and I encourage you guys in the comment section below, let me know how his French sounds. Now, naturally, I also asked in my Discord, how does his French sound? And the comments were generally along the lines of, well, he sounds robotic, but he doesn't sound that bad. Like, he's understandable. Like, it's not like he's not comprehensible. So, the question is then, how good is his French? Now, here is where I think some justification from the French teacher comes into play, is the fact that we don't actually know. Because the professor has never, from what I can tell, released a video where he's just speaking French. It's generally just him showing you the exercises that he takes, and, like the shadowing exercises or the language learning exercises. He doesn't actually show himself speaking French. So it says, I earned my BA from Columbia University of Comparative French and German Literature. Okay, so this is my initial thoughts when I read this and I see the types of videos that the professor makes. I get the feeling that the professor's not someone who's out here to be like a master speaker of the language. In fact, what he probably loves to do is read. That's what he likes to do with languages. He even mentions, reading a novel and stuff like that. So he's probably a big enjoyer of just reading, maybe writing, maybe he listens to the language, but I get the feeling he actually doesn't care about speaking the language that much. That's not like his goal in life. But I am making assumptions here. Now, the easy way for the professor to solve this, if he really wants, and if the professor does speak really good French, is just to drop a diss track in French. Just come out here and be like my homie in French and be just like, I'm out here to prove that I speak French, doof, 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 whatever they say in French could be, I will love fuck you up. I don't know what it is, but that would be the easiest way to solve this problem. And that's what I've done before when people have called me out on my Esperanto and Chinese. I just drop a diss track in whatever language it is, and that generally sorts out the issues, okay? But, this is a professor. He's probably just going to ignore this. But I was curious to check this out because I don't want to have in the community a sequence of events where I start calling out people and then everyone thinks, okay, so now what we have to do is just call out people without being justified in the call out. So we need to be very careful about how we do these things. We can't just be like, everyone's a fraud, or everyone's legitimate. No, we got to treat everything on a case-by-case basis. Now, if this was the outcome of my investigation, I would just say, I can't tell you how good the French of the professor is. Realistically, I don't have enough data. I know that he's quite robotic when he's doing his shadowing, because that's what my Discord has told me, but I do not have enough evidence to say whether he speaks French or not, and I would encourage him to take part in an interview, and if he turned that down, then I would make that out in the video. I'd say, I don't know. Okay? Because based on the fact that I have no, videos of him speaking French, how can I say? That's pretty much it. Now, if I go down to the bottom here, where it says, so is he legit? As a scholar of dead literary languages, I suppose so. As a motivational figure for language learning, possibly. This kind of rubs me the wrong way. As a scholar of dead literary languages, I suppose so. Are you a scholar of dead and literary languages? How can you say, I suppose so? I would have to ask someone who speaks Latin and Greek or whatever the dead languages that the professor studies and get their feedback. I'm not just going to say, well, I suppose so. I need to get some actual feedback, some actual evidence here. As a motivational figure for language learning, possibly. Well, that's speculative. Some people find him to be, motivational, some don't. As someone with actual spoken French in the language he claims, highly questionable, at least in French. What troubles me the most is that he doesn't seem to reflect as a linguist. He doesn't analyze structure, nuance, pragmatics, or the frequency of use. I don't know if you've seen a video of him speaking French that I haven't, but the only thing I've seen him doing is shadowing. And shadowing is a messy exercise. And he's also saying that he's here showing you what he would do if he were a student, okay? So screwing up is part of the process. This is not a demonstration of abilities. Now, final verdict. But as a linguist, a teacher, and fluent French speaker, based on the video I saw, I can say with confidence he does not speak French at even an intermediate level. I don't know how you could say that with confidence. You must have access to some type of material that I have not seen, okay? Because, saying that you gotta be really careful. You need to be sure about these types of things. Even when I have evidence, sometimes I cannot be sure. He does not appear to understand the sound structures or flow of spoken French, and he should not be held up as an example of fluent language performance. Well, this last statement here, if he doesn't have him speaking the language, then yeah, obviously he shouldn't be held up as an example of fluent performance or whatever. I'm not sure if people do. If people do, then that's up to them. They're the ones who need to, make that call themselves. I wouldn't, because I don't see him speaking French. But at the same time, I can't say he's an intermediate speaker of French. I have no idea. There's no content of him speaking French. And the fact that he's done a BA in comparative literature, I assume he can at least read the language quite well, probably really well. And how can we say that he does not understand the sound structure and flow of spoken French based on just that tiny little segment? Again, I feel like the structures, he's just repeating after a tape. That's all he's doing. It's not him making his own sentences. You could be completely correct. Maybe he is an absolute beginner at the language and is completely shit. You could be correct about that. But I would not be making such public, declarative, certain statements without evidence. But if you want to speak, understand, and connect in a living language like French, find a better model. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Like, if you want to speak French well, go find someone who's, out there teaching you how to speak French. But in this case, the professor seems to be more someone who's interested in reading and possibly writing in the language. So overall, my summary of this video, is that the teacher here, Chris, has made some really bold statements and accusations that I feel like cannot be proven. And if the professor turns around and drops a video where he's speaking fluent French, you're going to look like a dick. So I would want to be absolutely certain before I make this type of video and this type of blog post, okay? So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the matter. If anyone has their own opinions about his French, please drop them down in the comment section below. Would love to know what you think. And for those who agree with those comments, please, put a little comment under them. The ones who get the most comments, the most engagement will generally go to the top. And I encourage the professor, if this is not true, make a video speaking French, my man. Defend yourself, okay? Because, otherwise this shit's gonna spread. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, it's because I'm making a diss track in my language about you. Whichever language that is, I don't know at this stage. We'll figure it out, okay? We'll figure it out.